We are back to coming attractions. I think autonomous vehicles or so-called self-driving cars are everywhere now, at least in terms of discussions. When Google started running around this little car with all kinds of cameras and instruments, people thought it was crazy, but now every company is in it, including Amazon, FedEx, Apple, Google, of course, and so on, Microsoft, because they know that this is the future. Here is an image showing a car that's still being driver assisted. So a woman uses a mobile phone as she walks in front of an autonomous self-driving vehicle as it is tested in a pedestrian zone during a media event in Milton Keynes, north of London, on October 11, 2016. So they want to see if the automatic system is going to knock her off or slow down and stop. And of course already there have been, I think, at least a handful of accidents with the autonomous cars. On that date, driverless vehicles carrying passengers took to Britain's streets for the first time in a landmark trial that could pave the way for their introduction across the country. So one small step and one giant step kind of thing. This is an interesting statement here, and if you just read it and I didn't show you this information, you would think this was just written. But actually this is from a science fiction from Miles Brewer, who was actually a physician and a science fiction writer, in a book called Paradise and Iron from 1930. So this says, I walked all around the curious vehicle and I finally decided to get into the car. I climbed in and sat down with a queer feeling at the complete absence of steering wheel and gear shift levers. 1930, okay? However, on the dashboard were a great many dials and something was ticking quietly somewhere inside the machine. Then there was a clickety-click and a whir of a motor, and the car moved gently away from the curb. It swerved out into the street, gathered speed, and then turned to the right around a corner. It slowed down for two women crossing the street and avoided a truck coming towards us. It gave me an eerie feeling to sit in this thing and have it carry me around automatically. Then it suddenly dawned on me that here I was alone in the thing on an unknown street in an unknown city, racing along at too high a speed to jump out and rapidly getting further away from places with which I was familiar. So somebody had fully visualized how an autonomous car or a self-driving car would work so many years later. From the book, just a few points. It would be hard to discuss the basic technological capabilities of AV technology, autonomous vehicle technology, without acknowledging three other parallel and complementary areas of research and practice: shared vehicles, on-demand vehicles, and connected vehicle technology. So shared vehicles enable higher vehicle occupancy by facilitating shared trips in which riders are headed in similar directions. Liftline and Uberpool are two common platforms that provide this service already, and there are many other being driven by apps like Waze, which connect people at an individual level and allow share riding, cost sharing, etc. On-demand vehicles can be requested by customers and are expected to show up within a reasonable amount of time with a driver. A service that exists today with apps everywhere in the world. You can find these, and wherever we travel now, we always look for so-called ride-hailing services. Autonomy means your car will arrive without a driver. So this is one step further from these driver-driven cars. Okay, human-driven cars. Connected vehicles will be equipped with vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure communications capabilities, allowing those vehicles to collect and share data with other vehicles, roads, traffic lights, and so on in real time to smooth traffic flow and increase safety. So far, companies competing in this market have no agreement to have vehicle-to-vehicle or vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. That would be a loss because this communication combined with onboard artificial intelligence would equip cars to learn constantly and get increasingly smarter about geography, streets, situations, and destinations. So it would be constantly collecting data and improving the service, but people are always already nervous about sharing data. This is another example, the Navly self-driving shuttle on Lyon Confluence, Lyon, France. Driverless, autonomous, and fully electric, the shuttle carries passengers between Confluence shopping area and the tip of the peninsula. Equipped with lasers and cameras and highly precise GPS, the Navly shuttle will reach 25 kilometers per hour, but be safe for passengers or pedestrians. So as we talked before, speed limits on these is going to be critical because you don't want them to be reaching crazy speeds when it's purely autonomous and constantly depending on data, not just the road and the sides and the buildings, but also traffic in every direction, pedestrians, bicycle riders, and so on and so forth. It is said that these cars will not be driven so much by gas but by data. So obviously they may all become electrical cars and electric cars, and they will need an enormous amount of data to make this work. So what will the data be needed for? Cruise speed control, driving and parking assistance, braking management, obstacle detection system and road users, proximity alerts with other vehicles, and driving adaptations. Many of these are already built into cars now. Monitoring of operating conditions, speed adjustment according to path conditions. So weather, climate, snow, rain, traffic, etc. And from Synopsys, there is this nice schematic of levels of driving automation, which is already underway. No automation, lots of mistakes are made by drivers, but we don't worry about them on a day-to-day basis other than when there are accidents. Insurance companies worry about them all the time, and they collect data on your driving patterns, speeding tickets, accidents, etc. But we are very nervous about autonomous vehicles making the same mistakes, right? Driver assistance, partial automation, conditional automation, high automation, and full automation. And this is a paper from IEEE which talks about functional domains for connected autonomous vehicles with high-speed in-vehicle networks. So obviously in-vehicle network, infotainment, and safety. So you can see this connectivity to satellites, smartphones, back-end cloud systems, and all kinds of vehicle-to-vehicle and traffic light kind of communications. And all of this is constantly being churned. We talked about cloud data centers and energy usage and battery requirements. Think about this as well, right? So the other thing, fancy cars like this, maybe with dedicated lanes like we have for bicycles, this will work very well and will reduce number of cars, number of parking spots, space for other uses like shared spaces, parks, etc. And the other thing that one has to worry about is the continued urbanization and city areas and the other concepts that kind of contradict this. We want mixed uses, we want walkable areas, we want people to drive less, we don't want the suburban sprawl, and so on. So we have to see how autonomous vehicles will change the city designs and what is expected of more concentrated cities. And then of course there is COVID coming along and maybe will change people's thinking for a while. So all these are factors that are not necessarily going in the same direction, but autonomous driverless cars are here to stay, and they're only going to become bigger and bigger part of life, not just in the cities but also in the suburbs. So the entire thing has to be watched carefully, but it is obviously a big coming attraction.